So the Tricycle got on board slightly later than some of the other companies, and I think that's partly because we were newer as a team in the building, having just gone through a big change internally. And it seemed like the project was really chiming a lot with areas that we were already discussing about things that are really central to our mission statement in terms of unheard voices and how we find ways to bridge the gaps and the holes that are in our experience sometimes as audiences and in our programmes, and how you within a broad programme manage to traverse a real range of lives and experiences and stories and worlds. And so I think that was really what drew Indu and the Tricycle towards the project. And also, gender equality is something that we do discuss really regularly internally, and we think really carefully about the balance in terms of the writers that we commission. We think about it as well in terms of our programming, and it is something that we discuss on a weekly basis, if not much more than that. But it's also a really difficult problem. I think it shares a lot of the questions that come up with any issue of diversity. And I even hate the word diversity because it feels like something we shouldn't even need to use. Because it's really about people and human stories and showing that breadth that I just talked about earlier, and that feels really important to the Tricycle and to what we're trying to achieve. I think our question was definitely based on other people's questions, so we were probably slightly cheeky in that respect because we came, as I've explained, we came on board just slightly later, and so we already had a sense of some of the questions that some companies were asking, and it was in the ether. And what's closest to my heart, with a really literary background and as a dramaturg, is playwrights and stories, and the voices that we hear on stage. But I felt like there were already quite a lot of questions circulating around that, and I also knew from the experience of how Indu and myself work internally within the Tricycle, we are always raising those questions as part of our commissioning conversations and when we're looking at the breadth of the work that we have in development. So where we actually began was by looking at what that representation already was in our programme and where we were, rather than where we just assumed we might be, and what our instincts were telling us, and to really just sort of double check and see the truth of that. So we quickly realised that the easiest question probably for us would be questions about playwrights and roles and strong roles for women. But we also felt quite strongly that that was something we were already addressing, and not that there wasn't a significant amount of work to do, but that perhaps actually it wasn't the area that we could make the most significant impact with. And then we were looking at, so we just did some number crunching, and we looked at how those statistics bore out, and it became quite clear that for us as an organisation there was a disparity between certain roles, particularly in terms of creative roles, and some really positively, potentially, depending on which side of the gender fence you sit. But for example, in terms of our assistant directors, because we have a male resident director, our record on that was very strongly male. We have a female artistic director, that skews that in a different direction. And then we just tried to look at the areas where we had the least representation, and we want to start asking questions about why that was, what it means, how we might redress imbalance, but also not wanting to disenfranchise the value of creatives that we currently work with as well. It was really exciting to be in a room with so many different companies and so many different ways of working as well amongst us, but with so many similar questions, and to have time out from the day-to-day stress of oh, but we've got this gap in our programme, we just need to work out what we're going to put on, or we've got an empty cupboard, what should we do? We're running out of money, it's the end of the financial year, or all of those pressures that are really important in terms of the work that we do, but perhaps those day-to-day questions don't actually allow much time for bigger periods of reflection and to share our experience as well. And it was really positive that in various areas there was so much shared ground. So our question became very much like the Gates question, or their question became very much like ours. I don't know where that quite started. And in a similar way, there were lots of questions about how to support female writers, whether or not different support is needed, what support we offer writers full stop, and also how voices as directors and creatives can be heard when you're freelance and you're slightly more external on a regular basis to some of our companies, and how we create space for that conversation and space to welcome that conversation, space to always make sure that people who are also on the front line and putting themselves creatively at risk have room and feel part of an organisation and can contribute as fully as they're able to as well.